It is now 5 o'clock, and it is, today is Wednesday, November 20th. This is the meeting of the Westport Long-Term Building Committee. We'll start out with the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. John?
All right, so the first item on our action item agenda, very quickly, is approval of outstanding meeting minutes. I don't believe we don't have minutes currently to approve, do we, from last?
We do.
We do, okay. I think I may be missing that.
I didn't give it to you. We can put them on the next agenda.
We'll put it on the next agenda, okay, sure thing. One thing we can't skip over, however, Mr. Hartnett has served as the de facto clerk for this committee for quite some time, but we are in need of an individual to be a clerk for this committee. And I'm asking one more time for any, I'm begging for any volunteers, otherwise I will have to kind of draw straws and point at somebody at this point. So, is there anyone who feels excited about potentially being a clerk?
I would say I wouldn't mind, but I'm not as reliable as coming to the meetings as I would like to be.
That's fair enough. Mr. Gentro.
I would defer to other individuals who may be interested in that position. Due to
Mr.
my
Thrasher, I
service
would
in the
offer, but
purpose.
I have arthritic hands and I can't even write a check out anymore, so.
So to get us through this
Okay.
meeting, let me do one more meeting.
If you will do one more meeting, Mr. Harden, okay, but at some point in time, we're gonna have to.
Very excited about doing
here.
one more
Okay,
meeting.
yeah, one more.
He's gonna volunteer, right?
Manny's not here, yeah, all right, so yeah, when Manny gets here, well, that'll be, yeah,
Volunteer.
okay. All right, so that piece of business being over and done with for the day, we'll move on to our discussion items. So we're interviewing the responding parties for the Westport Facilities Feasibility Study. Thank you very much for attending this evening. And I will, first of all, the delegation from RGB Architects, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. We have how many minutes? So I can,
Two.
2 minutes? And that's about it, folks.
So we have budgeted for 55. but-
55. So I go half and you ask some questions and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Exactly.
As we figured, about 20 minutes. Won't take us that long. We'll go through this. Next slide. I want to do some introductions. I'm Dave DeQuatro. I'm the owner, the CEO, managing principal, chief bottle walk, cook, dishwasher, if you name it, I do it. I'm here with Monica Hanley, an interior designer, also a business development executive. John Racine and Phil Derby are both on vacation this week. It's that time of year. One's north and one's south, so they couldn't be here. So we can be here, and we usually present with them and without them, so it's no biggie tonight. The agenda, we want to talk a little bit about the background, the experience, understanding the project scope, as you wrote it in your RFP, cost estimation, and financial feasibility, study of the study itself, some stakeholder engagements. We'll look at obstacles, timeline, and some of the reporting we'll do as the due diligence is what's due. We'll do that all in about 20 minutes. So some of the background, we used your format, your 6 questions, and we put some answers in that, and we put it up in there. Now, some of these answers are here kind of to tip me off as talking points, so I'll talk through that whole thing. And can you tell us about your company, brief overview of your experience conducting feasibility studies and building assessments? So at RGB, we've been around since 1946. Next year, we celebrate our 79th year. I've been at RGB since 1992. Monica's been at RGB since 2007. And John's been with us 14 years, and Phil's been with us 4 years. So we are an architecture firm, an owner's project management firm, and an interior design firm. So we're a multifaceted firm. We find that Particularly pleasing because you can do different things. We have in-house cost estimators, we have contractors that work with us, and they help us all the way through, especially in feasibility studies like this, when you have cost estimates, or some of your questions will lead to, and I'll give you an examples of that when we go further on. We're all professionals, AIA, NCARB, we're licensed in 13 states right now. We do work all up and down the East Coast. Farthest work down is Miami, and where as north is New Hampshire, and we got west is right now Tennessee, but we go as far out as Texas, if need be, depending on our clients and type of work we do. We're made up of about 30 people in our organization. We were the first in Rhode Island to do a Green LEED certified building, and we were the second in New England to do a net zero building. So we're heavy into LEED sustainability. We helped write the green code of the state of Rhode Island that they use now. Which was nice because you don't pay all the fees of all the LEEDs and everything you do. The first LEED project in the New England area it was in Worcester, it was a Shaw Supermarket toilet, men's and women's toilets. It was in high profile, it was the first one, and we caught a lot of slack because it wasn't really the standard, and trying to get products was almost impossible, and contractors to perform. Now it's like the back of your hand, everything's available that way, so it's very easy to do now, it's more customized, but we were kind of the trendsetters on that, and it saves a lot of money doing it, it's kind of built into it. Innovative technology, we have all the latest, we're on Revit, we're on AutoCAD, we have 3D technology, we do virtual reality tours, we do everything like that, interactive presentations. Some of our markets is listed over there as generalists. We're big generalists. We do different markets. Whether it be civil, industrial, R&D facilities, office, retail, K through 12, higher education, you name it, we do it. And we keep multiple markets for a couple of reasons. One, you want to keep everyone employed. We like to keep people employed and keep the same people in the firm. That's how you build it. The second reason is because of the diversity of the markets, you can learn a little bit about markets. One of your questions was, what do you see as the issues with some of the materials and whatnot? I can talk a little bit about that. It's knowing those markets. Next slide, please. These are some of the partial lists we have of some of the feasibility studies we've done. It's quite a big list. I'm not going to go through every one of them. But we've got a lot of house doctor on-calls, and especially in Massachusetts, we have all the military ones. I'm a veteran myself. I did 12 years in the military. So we do a lot of military, a lot of EB work. We do a lot of these feasibility studies, and it gives us a lot of kind of groundswell of this project, because it's very similar to the one we just did in Coventry, Rhode Island. We'll use that as a case study in a second. Next slide. So some of the sustainable practice we do, like we're doing in New Bedford right now, we're doing the big courthouse in Taunton, that they're taking the tower down, rebuilding. That's our project. We're not allowed to put our sign up there because it's a federal courthouse. But we helped them get the rebates, incentives. We helped them get $500,000 to put the flame back up. You'll see the flame on top of that courthouse shortly. So we work with local towns and governments to help with those rebates, help with those forms for grants, and give the supporting information. It's kind of custom that we do that. Local utility companies, all our sub-consultants use those all the time. We know they're out there, whether that be National Grid in Massachusetts, Rhode Island Energy, or any of the energy companies offer them, and you have to comply with those, and we do. Some of the state sustainability objectives, we also meet those as well. With the energy modeling tools, we can almost look at something when we select some of the systems. If you do a heat pump system in the new building opposed to a boiler or a propane, because gas is on its way out, especially in the state of Massachusetts. So you want to do heat pumps, electric systems, and they've come a long way. The biggest thing about a heat pump system like you'd have, say, in your house, is that you don't have natural ventilation. In your house, you don't really need it, but in buildings, you do need natural ventilation. So we put ERVs, those are the small units on the top, and they're pretty efficient as far as building goes. Next slide. So stretch code was one of your questions about some of the stuff we've done on stretch codes. We're currently using a stretch code we just did the major campus over in Hopkinton, Mass. For Iona laborers. It's a $75 million campus made up of about 8 different buildings, and we had to use the stretch code on that. We're in 20 different housing authorities in the state of Massachusetts, and we use stretch codes for every one of those, as an example. Next slide. So number 2 is understanding the project scope. So in your RFP, you listed these in orange here. I'll go through them real fast. Introductory meetings, physical evaluation, site evaluation, concept level, and then final report. Now I'll go through what it takes. So the intro meeting is very important because you want to gather from you all or a building committee what the next steps are. You've done several studies of the same building that we've recognized, we've done research for, and we've looked at. And when you get your new high school, you have this old high school. I'm sure there's controversial uses of what to put, what not to put. And a lot of times, buildings go a long time, and if you leave them long enough without caring for them, they get worse and worse and worse. And we did this for the town of Coventry School Department. They let a building go too far. And it went too far, and unfortunately had to demo the entire building, because once the building goes too far, the weather really corrodes what's inside, and it goes bad, and the cost to remediate some of the stuff that'll go bad outweighs the cost of the building project itself, most of the time. So we would have introductory meetings to find out exactly what your scope is, or what the agenda is, if there's any political hot potatoes in the town, if there's any general views that the town has already through the other studies that you think that this is the direction we want to go, but we didn't get that far, then we'll take it upon there. We do a physical evaluation, something we're doing right now for a company called C Corp. They build Tomahawk missiles in Middletown. So like I said, we do a lot of military stuff. We're going down there to take a look at their building right now that they're interested in buying, very similar, and they want to move all their operations into one building. We go down there and we, transport us and our engineers. We dispatch everyone out there on the same day, so there's communication. We communicate with our engineers the day before in advance of what the acknowledgement of what they're going to be doing that day, and then we go out and we look at the building systems, look at the structure, look at the civil components, capacities, the conditions of some of the utilities are in, both new and old, and look at the roof, like I said, the structure and the interior finishes and whatnot. When we do our site evaluation, we look at site egress and ingress, which is as important as drainage, sewer, septic, and all those issues. Because if this is going to be the new town hall annex, you want, like this building, it to be easy to come in, easy to park, very easy to understand where the front of the building is. Concept level, development, budget, and timeline. So we'll come up with different concepts, usually 2 or 3 different concepts we'll come up with budgets, and of course, everything is with a timeline. And I'll put the timeline on the introductory meeting, because right after that intro meeting, we distribute and use what they call a Gantt chart. It's a bar chart. And we put all of our meetings in advance with timelines on it, so that people know in advance, and they know, hey, I have a meeting coming up at the end of March. I better be here for that meeting, and you can plan around that. And so you have better participation in it. It also has on that Gantt chart all the expectations of when things are due, when the drafts are due, when the final ones will be due, when the costs are due. And then the final report is something that we get and deliver to you after we receive the draft. We give you a draft report, you look through the draft, we go through it with you. We could have public meetings. You could include in that final report some of the comments from the public meetings, and include that in the appendix of that final report. Next slide. You can ask questions during this or at the end, either way. Okay? Cost estimation, financial feasibility. So how we estimate the cost of 3 different ways. We have internal cost estimates, or estimators, I should say. We have external cost estimators, and then we have record cost. And record cost is every time we have a project, we do about 100 to 125 projects a year. When you have these projects coming into bid, it gives you a good idea of the type of building for the renovation, what they're going to square footage. Cost estimators, the third party, also do the same thing. They look at trending for cost estimates in and around the area, the region. And then we do them internally with our cost estimates to bounce that back and forth. So you use those 3 indicators and you come up with a pretty good average if they're not all really on top of one another. Like I can tell you right now, to renovate buildings, you're looking at probably $150 to $350, depending on the type what you want to use. New building structure, like the one we're in, like a masonry structure, look at almost $700 a square foot. So more and more towns and cities are saying, hey, let's not destroy the old building. Let's refinish it and repurpose the building, which is a wise decision to make because the structure is the most important. And you know where the bodies are, right? You're not going to go dig a hole outside where you want to put a building and find out it used to be an old pond about 50 years ago. So the amount of land around here is very, very precious. There's not a lot of it. And usually these older buildings were built on good land. So we would look at that as well. Key cost drivers right now is, costs are actually coming down, which I haven't said that in about 5 years. They were skyrocketing at one point to 12 to 14%. They're averaging off about 4 to 6% on average per year. And the cost we're seeing, not labor, but the materials is actually coming down. So we don't know how long that'll come down or if it'll stabilize. I like to use a number of 6% per year on average is a good inflation factor. So whatever estimate we put together, we put an inflation factor on that estimate, so that if you want to do things 3 years from now, you do the 6% every year per diem, and that'll give you a pretty good result of it. Weather's been pretty cooperative with us. We really haven't stopped construction in winter since 2013, so over 10 years since we've stopped it. But they have other provisions for winter conditions now that basically we work right through the winter. It's not like the old timers used to tell me all the time. But those are the three factors really that drive cost. It's labor, supply materials, and then conditions themselves. How do you identify and evaluate risks associated with the building project, structure failure, cost overruns, and delays? So this is a great thing because we look at, and I'll use a case study, and we'll talk a little bit about Coventry in a second because it's in construction right now. In Coventry, they said they had an old high school that they used half for its school administration, and they wanted to use it for an annex. And their current town hall was across the street, very similar, right? And it had an old school building. We went in it and looked at it and evaluated it, and we're now renovating it. And we did that a certain way where we were able, through grants, through the state grants and federal grants and local grants, be able to pay 90% of that money. Kevin McGee, who's the DPW director, is our contact, and he'll be our reference if you want to speak to him directly. We've been pretty successful, and we took on that OPM role as well as the architect role. So what that afforded us to do is to actually shop and go out with subcontractors so that we not only got accurate prices, we actually got schedules. So we're in the construction phase right now, and we're guiding these guys along. We're expected to be done in about 6 months. It's about $3.7 million worth of construction, and we expect it to be within 7% of that number. Some of the stuff that are unforeseen that we've noticed thus far is pretty much nothing except the Tectum deck that's on the roof right now. We would examine your roof. So Tectum is a subsurface, instead of a metal deck, it's a softer material they used in the 50s and 60s to span across the roof. And it was a great, cheap product that they put insulation on until it gets wet. And once it gets wet, it turns to like shredded wheat. And there's no structural capacity at that point. So once you find that, you want to remove it and you want to put metal deck in its place. So that's about it. That is really the scope creep, if you will, in that project. We've renovated spaces for the building official, the town manager. There's an auditorium for training for the police and fire, for EMT and whatnot. There's also some things for training for handicap individuals, teach them how to cook, teach them how to use computers, and they even put a cafe in there. The cafe is there to bring people from the outside. So in that notion, they wanted to bring people in and have them go around that area and bring some life to that big building. So those are some of the risks we found in there. It's pretty little risk. And the way we do that is we go all the way through the estimates. We start off with those estimates, and then we shoot them out to subcontractors. So we get a better idea where the budget's going. Next slide. Stakeholder engagement. This is pretty important, if not the most important slide, I think, because we can all do our job out there, but if we do it in a vacuum, then we're not doing a good job. We want to get buy-in. After all, I've done a number, over 30 bonds for cities and towns, and if you get the buy-in from the people in the building committee, those are the people of the town. They're the ones that are going to go back to the taxpayers and say, this is a good thing for the town, not the hired gun. I'll certainly help. I'll support it with boards and presentations, but ultimately it has to come from the townspeople. Town administrator has to say it, and he has to believe it. For that to do that, he has to be involved in those meetings, see it, understand it, and agree with it. And we would do all that. And then you wanted some examples of how this worked with other communities. So we did North Smithfield Middle School, we got that approved, Coventry, Newport, Lyuna was one of them. Going off my Narragansett Town Hall, and Providence City Hall, and then you're working with Providence Community Center right now with Public Stakes. So Providence Community Center, again, is working with grants that we helped them get the grants, and now Monica and her gang are all working diligently on a community center type of environment. And it's strange how the grant is written. You have to have so many community meetings in order to advance that. And we're doing the same thing, let's say, with Bristol Library. they're doing the same grant, and they have these community stakeholder meetings where the community can come in and actually change the pro forma or change the profile of the project. We do that early on because you don't want to go all the way down the road and have it changed on you. And then how do you manage competing priorities or conflicts among stakeholders? Well, that's why I threw out that question tonight about the weather, because pretty much everyone agrees on the weather and can communicate. If I start talking about the national elections, that'd be a little bit more difficult to get everyone on the same page. Well, building projects are very much the same way. Everyone's very opinionated on which way they want to go and what they want to do and how they want to spend the money. And if you're not in the construction industry, you can't believe it's $700 a square foot for a new building. I mean, we're even stunned sometimes we get this price. It's like, what happened to 400, 500? It skipped right over that. So it's understanding some of the conflicts that you have amongst the people around you and trying to mitigate that and come to a happy medium. Knowing that not everyone's going to be happy, but everyone's going to be satisfied, and that's what you want at the end of the game. And if we have that direction, RGB can deliver. Once we have that direction, we'll make it happen. We'll take that ball across the lawn.
Communication, good communication, and understanding the troubles.
Thank you. Obstacles. What types of challenges do you anticipate for this study and plan on overcoming them? Similar to the ones I just talked about, if there's past studies that people out there prefer better than the new studies, or study A versus study C, you want to vet those things out early on. That is the biggest challenge. That and timing. If we wait too long and the price does keep going up, because inflation does happen, even though the cost of materials are going down, there is general inflation. People get paid every year more money, cost of living goes up. So does the cost of construction. So timeline now is the cheapest time to build. It'll never be cheaper than it is today. So if you use that in the back of your mind and set a schedule, sit to that schedule, then I can guarantee that number will work at the end with low change orders. Our average change orders are less than 1% on average because of that routine that we go through. Next one. Timeline and reporting. So what's the typical timeline for completing a feasibility study from initial assessment to final report? So we just started one today for DEM, Department of Environmental Management, and that report's going to take us about 8 weeks to complete. This report should take us 8 to 12 weeks, about 3 months to complete. Why that one's different is they already have a direction. So they're already advanced, they already know what they're doing, what they want to do. So you're going to take you 2 to 3 weeks. With the holidays, it may push that out a little bit more depending on people's participation and involvement, people travel, whatnot. So we'll try to get a consensus early on in January of where these things are going to go. Once I get that consensus, then I'd bring all the consultants in, all the engineers in. We'd huddle, we'd find out what we're going to do, and we'd all meet on the site, everyone on the committee. If this is the committee, we all meet on site. So everyone's talking to the engineers, understanding what's going on in the building, understanding what they're looking at all at the same time. That's kind of that indoctrination that I was talking about earlier for people to understand and to get a hold of the project. Then after that, the next meeting, we kind of go through our notes and find out what's going on, and that's when we get that direction. People do come to the table with their other information, and then we would ask people to go out in the public and find out what their interpretation of the building is, and we'd mend those together. That's January. February is the time where we're putting that initial report together. All the due diligence, all the cost factors, all the different plans that we'll go over. March is the time when we then finalize everything, finalize with a draft form. We review cost estimates, we do presentations, we get feedback, and then towards the end of March, we finalize the report. We'll do another presentation if you'd like us to at the same time. I think this is the 6 questions.
Yeah, this will be the 6 questions. Now we have some, I mean, I don't know if you want to go through this, other ones. Can you describe the key components of the feasibility report?
Oh, okay, sure. Can you describe the components of, yeah, the technical feasibility would be all the engineers, they put their input in what's needed. Financial feasibility, we'd look, you know, if you have a finance director and he has to go for some grants and you get some other money that comes in from the town, we can put that all in there. The difference between soft and hard costs, you'll use that terminology. Hard costs are brick and mortar, soft costs is our fees. Architects, engineers, planners, surveyors. Legal feasibility. If you're looking to do that, say you're in a school, I understand, and it's a school or education type use, and you're looking to put a town use in there, there could be provisions of either traffic, which is pretty minor, or other provisions of zoning. We'd go through that operational as well.
I have a question about the technical feasibility. it says comparative analysis of building sites. Since we know the two sites, we know obviously the two sites. What would that entail? What would
So-
be the, go ahead.
Yeah, like for, when we looked at a middle school for North Smithfield, we looked at 32 sites, we ended up on the same site we started on. So, you know, rock, water. So Westport has a certain basin that you deal with in Westport, a certain type of site. So we would look at the big picture, is there a building on the site? So maybe utilities already connected, so that may be a good building. This site over here is beautiful, it's cheap, in fact, we own it, that's great, but now you have to dig in it. I don't know what it is there any kind of rock outcroppings? If that becomes a finalist, say, and you want to do test bits, you use the town's DPW backhoe, we'd go out there with an engineer, so it minimizes your cost. We dig holes, do test bits to try to find out what the soil's made up, what the compost, the soil is, if there's a lot of water, if there's ledge, wetlands, that's the kind of stuff, utilities around there.
I was a little more concerned, there's an intangible in Westport of, I don't like change, of traffic flows, accessibility, possible multi-use type stuff.
Yep, that would be the third thing is that, you know, traffic studies, any kind of traffic studies to back that up. You know, if you put it in a residential area, they're gonna be worried about, you know, I've looked at that oak tree for 50 years, now you gotta take it down and put this building up, what am I gonna see? That's renderings will show that, we'll put more trees back in its place, just in certain areas. I think what you wanna do is, you have to gauge those naysayers in town, and you wanna invite them, and you wanna bring their solutions to the problem you have. And by doing that, you invite them into the building. Maybe the building is part of a community center that you use, and that's what kind of Coventry did with their cafe, and if they can bring the neighborhood into it. So it's not a bad thing if people can participate in that building. The other things you want to look for in a site is short-term and long-term cost. Drainage. You want to look at depth of the site, long-term use of the site, and you want to also look at future potential of the site. You always want to look at future. You know, being an architect doing this 35 years now, I've gone into a lot of buildings where they never thought I was going to put a second floor or put an addition, and it makes it terribly difficult and extremely costly to do. Where a lot of our buildings, if not all of our buildings now, look at second floor options, extended options. So part of that site analysis would be, do you have expansion possibilities? No one thinks that Westport will expand, but it will. Since you guys were pilgrims, it's expanded, so it'll continue to expand, it'll get bigger. It may be different in the future, but how does that building change? How does the technology change with that building? How do you see government working in the next 50 years? Because I would imagine you'd go to this next building for the next 50 years at least. So how are things changing? Are you going to continue to have public meetings? What's the format of that? All those discussions will happen.
How about in really in the reverse sense, in the negative sense, that if the town chose not to pursue using that building, the things that would be lost as a result of it? I mean, can you also include a scope? For example, there are playing fields at that site. If the town chooses to not pursue using that site and it's sold, I mean, can you provide alternative opportunities for some of the things that are gonna be lost as a result of not pursuing it? So it's not what you gain, but what you also lose if you don't pursue it.
So some of our slides will do pros and cons,
Right, okay.
and then we'll present those. So that the people that show up the day you're doing your draft that weren't involved, either through business or life challenges, they would be able to, when we give that presentation, we'll walk down the strategy to bring us all, hopefully, to the same solution. And to the people that come in from the outside, we'll be able to look at that solution and say, I understand why they got where they got. You know, so all those things are open, and a person like yourself would know more of those challenges than a person like myself. I'd have to get in there and I'd look at the obvious, but you would know historically. That was a ball field that was back 100 years. People use that every year for a certain beginning of the parade. That's a very important field in town. That's great information. And that may be something that a lot of people who grew up in this town, that still live in this town, value and love and don't want to change. So we'll try to make that a pro to that site analysis, maybe use that same ball field as part of the new program of that building. So it's all the pros and cons and understand that. What I'm trying to gather in everyone is that we don't go home, do our report, and come back and say, here's your draft. we participate with you. That's the only way we'll get a successful draft and a successful report out of it, that you can get total buy-in. Because after a while, I go away. You guys have to stay here. You know, we want to make it so popular that when the gentleman asks for a person to take the town administrator's position and taking notes, everyone's going to leap to that position. That's not really on the agenda, but I can make that happen, right? That's the objective.
Like you said, you were almost ready to volunteer.
Yeah, I do it all the time. I'm on a couple of committees, I do that. So it's all good.
Let's see. I did have one just quick question, going back to what you had talked about as far as projects you have been involved in. Are there any projects where you all have been there from start to finish? Those are the ones I'm really curious about.
I have a slide here that if you allow me to,
Absolutely.
just advance to it. So we have several case studies that we've gone from feasibility studies all the way down to, so first, let me go back to this slide here. This is a partial list of feasibility studies of all different types of buildings that we've gone through. The ones that are highlighted in orange are the ones that have not gone through construction, but all of those feasibility studies began with a feasibility, went through design, construction, and construction management. So I will give you just an example of what this list provides. If you take those orange ones out of it, those are the ones that did not go yet. But we're currently working with Merrimack Valley, doing a feasibility study and master planning, because they're doing the same thing. They're repurposing these buildings, and we are helping them with site planning and relocation. So that has not gone through construction, but we're currently working with them. Salva Regina, the same thing. The university has gone through
8 years of
8
legal
years of
battles.
legal battles. So,
Only imagine.
so you can imagine that all these things just take time. So we start with feasibility studies, and then, we just kind of get put on hold. The same thing with the archives, and we can see this building from our office. And it's kind of sad because they have beautiful, beautiful archives and history in that building. And again, the same thing, all these archives, the building is deteriorating inside, and they can't get together that is politics, that
Right,
actually
so the
sometimes
answer to your question is everything in white we finished to the end, everything in orange
has not.
is in the process.
And I would just advance here if you want to. If you have any other questions, I'll just get back to my other 6th point here. This is your sixth question, but there are some case studies, just 5 that Dave was going to speak about.
Yeah, unless they ask questions, they're on a schedule, so I don't
Okay.
wanna-
Sure.
I passed my 20-minute park and I did it, so.
Continue, no.
Just for the note, I'm on time and on budget.
Are we in questions now?
You can, sure.
I'm John Perry. I'm an architect, and I've done what you guys have done.
Nice to meet you, John.
And, I'm not sure anybody in this committee agrees with most of the things I advocate or point out, but that's okay.
Disagree.
And I had a discussion with Jim this morning about the project. My frustration is that this thing's been going on for years now. I think it's highly ambitious and probably not realistic to think that we're going to come to a consensus in 12 weeks. So I would encourage you to think about alternate strategies. I had advocated a while ago for a facilitator, which we went ahead, but it didn't get advertised and we had no participation. I happen to believe in that process. That's essentially what you're talking about at the beginning here. And I think that needs to be done. I understand there's some other work that needs to be done, but I think we start to have to bring this town along from 50 ideas down to 2 or 3 and then head in different directions. Just as an aside, I meet with a bunch of guys on Friday mornings over here at the coffee shop. And it's old guys with coffee. And the subject for the last months has been the high school. And it's quite, and people have a lot of ideas that have never come to this table yet. And I think that has to be brought out, talked about, looked at, and either looked at in more detail and said that isn't going to work in the context of the building, the high school. So I'm throwing out here not roadblocks, but things I think has to be done if we're gonna get any use out of you or whoever else is doing this thing. This is a funny town, like they all are. And there's been articles written about this town. This is the town that loves to fight, and a lot of us can't get along with the other half of us. Hopefully, as we go on, that won't be the case, and certainly on this project, it'd be nice to get a consensus, but I can tell you there hasn't been one, and I've been the chairman of a couple other committees here that did all this consensus work, and then the selectmen take it and they throw it in the basket. So that's the background we have here. I throw that out there, and here's a couple things that I made notes. There's been a lot of reports done. I've read them all. I don't know how many people on the committee have done them. I think some of them are quite good, especially the ones by Lambest and the structure report and the code. I mean, you guys may replicate that, but these guys knew what they were doing when they came in. The building's got code issues and it's got major issues there. It has a lot of opportunity too. So I'm throwing out to say that I think 12 weeks isn't gonna work. You can make your proposal on that, but I can guarantee you at the end of 12 weeks, we are not gonna have a consensus on this project. Unless everybody on this table is in violent disagreement with me, but anybody who's done anything in this town knows that it takes time. And look around, we have nobody at the meeting today. And we want this room to be filled by the time we get to the point of talking about things. So that's one item. Existing reports, you've read them all. I would say good, bad, indifferent.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Good
that's my
reports.
thought. Okay. Major issue here is we've had discussions with the superintendent of schools. I've talked to him with everybody, and I've talked to him personally about it. I can't get a feel what his feeling and the school department is about whether we might need that building or not. Everybody says, yes, we might, maybe not, maybe we may need more schools, but that isn't the place to do it. That's a huge issue that's got to be, I think, addressed early on. Are we looking at that as a school to be mothballed for the future? Is that we're looking at a school to be renovated for the future? Or let's get rid of it as an idea. But I think until that gets assessed, all other uses for that building sort of, why are we doing it if we're still talking this as a school? And lastly, with regard to yourself, are you looking at this as consultants for a feasibility study, or is this an entree to do the A&E work? I've been there both.
Yeah. All the above.
Yeah, okay.
We can do everything. So I want to address a couple of your questions if I could. So it's understanding what the
So
different,
I told Jim this morning, I'm more than willing to work and help this committee, but I'm only going to do it if, in fact, I think there's a viable process and a timeline and a commitment to do this. I'm amazed this young lady who is still here. She's been much longer than me.
so I'll give you a couple of examples of other towns and cities that have been, and Westport is no different than any other
Oh, I
city
know
in New
I've-
England, so they're very similar, yeah. And you being in the business, you know that. So is there anything that the city, the town of Westport agrees on?
Say again?
Is there anything that they agree on? Like, I would start with that conversation first, right?
That's an excellent question.
Right?
There are two things,
Whoa, get a
there are two things everybody agrees on. They're overworked and they're tired.
Overworked and tired, but I mean, particularly this building, is there anything that they, I mean, I would agree with you. I'm overworked and tired too, right? Yeah. But we agree on
I
that.
don't think
so.
so, especially with regard to these buildings, because people, there are a lot of ideas out there.
But if you would have to say two
I
or
can take you
three,
to coffee on,
I'd love to, I mean, I,
you'll get a shopping list,
Yeah.
no agreement.
if you had a certain number of dollars that you had to spend within a time frame and you had to make a decision, or you'd lose the money, you'd come up with a decision instead of losing the money,
I don't know
Oh,
if that's
boy,
true or
I
not.
don't know. That's even a tough one.
okay? So,
It'd be nice to think it is.
yeah, couple of great examples of ownerships of buildings with towns and schools. There's always this rift between the town and the school. You get your taxes, there's the school taxes, there's the town taxes, and then there's the selectmen. And those three bodies move like this, and it's tough to pin them down. The school, and I've worked with dozens and dozens of schools, all worry that the town's gonna take their real estate, and they won't be able to get it back. And the town thinks that they're overpaying for the real estate that the school has. And then you have the selectmen that just have a number of dollars that they can commit to, or you lose it. So the first thing you do is you find out, is there something that the school can benefit from this property? Is there something that the town, and what would the selectmen agree on? And if you get that into agreement, that's the first step. Now you have the basis to make your other steps go forward. And you're right, it may take longer. I'm assuming 12 weeks, because I'm gonna set a schedule and I'm gonna charge forward with it and make sure it happens. But there will be some roadblocks. I always look at the biggest roadblock I always see is dollars. Either the funding that runs out, funding that's only available for this type of building and not that type of building, that automatically throws something out, and I gotta go to the selectmen to get the money. When we were doing Taunton Courthouse, the flame had been taken down 20 years ago, when it was in a DPW garage, and we dusted it off, and we said, well, where does this go? And it goes up there. We had old pictures of it. Well, no one had money for it. Everyone thought it was a good idea. And the people that made those decisions didn't have the money. So we actually approached one of the selectmen, and he went up to the governor, and she thought it was a great idea, and we got $500,000. It just started from an idea. So if you can generate an idea amongst the people, that maybe they're not 100% in agreement, but maybe they'll go for it because they have something in it. Another famous example was they call a bundle bond. Sometimes you go for a school bond and you have the anti-school people, the people that don't have kids in schools anymore, that they don't want their taxes going up. And then you have the people that have young children that want good schools for their kids, and they look to the older people and they say, well, you had good schools for your kids in the day, why can't I have mine? And you say, I'm just trying to live here, a town I grew up with, and I don't want to leave. How do you put those two together? You create a bundle bond. So now I create a senior center with a school and a town appendage. So everyone uses that position. Maybe I have a police station annex in there, and you bring that together. So that's kind of bringing those three kind of people, and you bring them together into one bond that satisfies everyone. Now, I don't know what I'm dealing with yet, because I haven't met the gentleman on a Friday morning.
Process you're talking about.
It could be a couple of meetings, and what you do to bring people in the audience, you bring food.
Right.
I put this big commercial center together, a big mall, and it was very controversial, and I grew up in that town, and I remember one lady saying to me, you're not even invited in this town anymore if this thing goes ahead. It was an embarrassment to my town. I created this great mall, we put it together, and then she came after me after when the Staples was open, and she was buying things. So this was the greatest thing ever. But how we got there is we fed them. You bring people to a place, you have a pizza, or you bring some coffee and some donuts, and you make it a roundtable discussion where people don't sit at the edge of the table. And we said, we have a problem. We have a building in town that if we don't do anything with this, it'll cost us money. And if we do something with it, it's going to cost us money. So everyone's here tonight to decide what we want to do with it, and let's throw some ideas. And when you throw them on the board, you try to finalize what ideas blend or seem together, and you come up with something. It may take 1 or 2 or even 3 meetings, but you try to build that consensus. And that's what's going to generate this. The other thing is you have to have a deadline, because deadlines make things happen. I love the thought of the coffee on a Friday morning. I always tell my wife when I retire, that's what I'm going to do. That's what I want to do. I want to meet with the guys and talk and all that stuff, and it'd be a lot of fun. But that goes forever. There's no time frame. So if you could put a time frame on the end of this thing and says, look, if we're going to run out of funding as of May 1st, we've got to make a decision, and this is the schedule we have to work towards. Or we're going to lose this opportunity in our town, an opportunity we've had several times before. Then you generate that momentum, and we give it our best shot. I don't want you to do another study. You spent a lot of money on studies, you know? Look at Durfee High School. Durfee High School, we're working in the Durfee gym right now, because they built a new high school, and their plan was to knock down the high school and put fields up, which they did. And they kept the auditorium. Now we're working inside the auditorium, making those classrooms, because the schools they built weren't big enough. So the school department says, aha, see, that's why we should have saved the money, because you never knew if there's extra schools. But the town's also in there as well. The town, we're working with the EMS department, they were in there at one point. Now they want to do school administration in there. They want to do town administration in there. They want to use it as a multifunction cultural center for the entire town. You see how they're bringing the whole town into it, instead of just the school. So trying to separate that, or peel that banana, if you will. and that's our objective.
And that is truly the nature of the beast that we have here. We need someone to pull all of these needs together. It's a very large building, it's 160,000 square feet. No one department can use the entire building. And so we need the creativity to show people how it can be carved up and used for multiple purposes. Because I think it can satisfy a lot of needs, not just for town hall. There are a lot of people that are very much accustomed and really want to preserve this existing building as the town hall. The school is centrally located to town, and a lot easier with the highway access and whatnot, but this is Central Village, and this has been the town hall for, forever. And so there's a lot of sentiment that wants to keep this here. So how do you include a little bit of both or none, but there's the Council on Aging, there's cultural issues, there's sporting events, there's the recreation department that wants to use it, possibly the highway department to use the garages there. So there's so many different facets, and we haven't been able to pull all of that together to do a creative outlook as to how that could look and how it could be utilized.
Right.
Maybe there's housing thrown in there, I don't know. Maybe there's some school facilities that could be used there. There's a little bit of sensitivity with including school in it because it's also a public building, and so you'd have students mixed with public, so if you have young students there, that's perhaps a problem. But all of those things need to be vetted out, and each one of the members of this committee can't do that individually. So that's why we need a firm like yours to pull this all together and show the town, this is how it can be. There's a price tag, but there's a price tag to do nothing. And I think that's the thing that people have to really understand. No matter what we do, it's gonna cost money. It's gonna cost money to knock it down, it's gonna cost money to mothball it, it's gonna cost money to develop it. So it's worth nothing to sell it because someone has to do the same things that we have to do, and that costs money to them. So I think if we were to sell the land, the town would not recover very much, and we would lose a very valuable asset as a result of that, because we can't get that much land with a public water supply and playing fields. Again, where are we gonna find that?
Right.
So selling is an option, but I don't think, personally anyway, my opinion, not the highest and best use of that land. But no matter what we do, it's gonna cost money. And so we need to have a good roadmap as to what are the different ways that we're going to, and one that we can sell, an option that can be sold, whatever the choice may be, so.
You know, the town of North Smithfield, if I could, town of North Smithfield, this building reminds me a lot of Kendall Dean. There's a school called Kendall Dean, and the Kendall Corporation, in the early 20th century, gave the building to them. They would only be able to use it for school use. It's now the town hall, because the town hall they were in was small, it was antiquated, so they went over to Kendall Dean. That was a big controversial, it was always given to the school, you should always, well, they built a new school. So they went through different renditions. Senior Center, they went through school administration, Talahone Annex. There were ball fields in back of the school, very, very similar. That took 8 years to develop. So it took a long time to develop with different ideas. Finally, it came down to, they passed a bond, they had money, and the money was gonna run out, and they had to do something. Well, let's speed ahead 8 years. We ended up renovating that building for school administration on one level, second level is town hall, and third level is town hall. And we put an addition in back for the town hall open area where they have town hall meetings. There's still a ball field in back, they still use it for multi-use type buildings, and they seem to be happy. Not everyone was happy in town, because they wanted a new building, they wanted it all for schools, they didn't want to ruin the old building, but these old buildings have a lot of good things to them,
Right.
right? So you don't want to just get rid of them. And lastly, the comment you made about keeping that asset and never selling that asset is a good thing. Because the town will get money, but the town produces money, so it doesn't need to sell it. It's not like it's an entity. And you want to keep that land because it does have those utilities built into it that aren't that easy to get anymore.
Right.
One of the,
Yeah, go ahead.
one of the things that Dave has mentioned, we are also forensic architects. We look at these buildings in the same, find the problems, find the issues in corrective approaches. no, we didn't have a chance to show you this, but this is a slide where we have been working with all these public buildings in Massachusetts, Fall River Public Library, all of these forensic assessments, looking at these beautiful structures, beautiful old buildings, and, you know, they're assets,
Yes, right.
they're real assets. So now, one will say, you know, that obviously they're on the historic registry, they would not be something that you want to get rid of, but there are other buildings, brand new, you have to involve the community. This one right now, I just, on last Thursday night, we had community involvement, and what we did is we got together with the community, because again, this was a building that received a grant, and it was created as a resiliency hub, which is a new concept right now. When you want money, it's available there, but it has a deadline. We had to involve the community, the town bought food, and let me tell you, so, I have pictures, we're gonna be posting them on the website, and you're welcome to go look at them. The response that we got from the public, because it used to be an old abandoned school, there was a lot of crime in the area, a lot of these things, but we got the community involved, now it's a community center. What happens in there now, it's education, it's healthcare, all these grants need to meet a certain amount of requirements for them to keep that money, but it's no longer used as a school, but it does have that educational component. And so there are examples of how you can involve the community and make something that may not be possible and feasible, but grab that money that's available out there to start the process of
Chris, can
resilience.
So one question, quick one. Who's going to be the project manager? Who's the one, if we hire, would be at our meetings? Who are we going to deal with on a
So
regular
there'll be
basis?
two of us, it'll be myself and John. John Racine will be there.
And
We're the guys where we'll, from the outside periphery, will be able to guide everything. Then we'll get into the actual project, examples of interior finishes, renderings. That's when you'll see Phil and Monica and a whole host of other staff.
Can I ask a question? How many projects do you guys have going now?
Currently in design and construction, we've got about 85.
And you're the president?
Yes.
You're not gonna have much time for this one compared to those other 83, right?
Absolutely. I work 7 days a week. People laugh at the way I work, but I love it. So I'm up at 4:30.
I mean, I'm not saying that you should be full-time on this, but I've been in the business too, and I know that there's a lot of demands on your time, so.
We work, the structure of our company is that I have 5 principals. Each one of those principals are a head of a division, whether it be housing, educational, retail, commercial, historic preservation, and they run their practices, and I run them. On a job like this, where you're gonna have a lot of public presentations, a lot of history, because I've been there so long and what it's done, I'll always have my involvement. I have my involvement in every project. I touch every one of them. I will not be here alone. I will be here with John, and John's a registered architect as well as the project manager. He's also a principal as well. So that's how we run. That's how we run multiple projects like that. You in essence have 5 different firms in the same company like that.
If I could, or actually, you have one, go right,
Sure,
go right
yes.
ahead.
So an important consideration for a small community like Westport, and it's not unique to Westport, but communities like ours, certainly are funding. So could you expand a bit more on, I know you mentioned a couple projects where grants were taken in, external funding opportunities. The town has rejected, I believe, over a dozen override ballot questions since the late 90s. So funding is a big, consideration here in Westport. So if you could talk about some of the funding opportunities that you've seen in other projects.
Well, there are general bonds. There was just, it's ending the end of December, is you have the COVID money, the APRA, I think it's called, funds. They're ending. But there's general, the bonds that you're working with Providence on. Those are certain bonds and grants that go out. So if there's certain grants or provisions, we work towards them with you. We do all the documents and the paperwork, the supporting stuff to help you get those grants. And then we follow those guidelines and grants, like the city of Providence. They took this existing building that had been somewhat renovated, and our job now is to go in there and try to make it something based on those grants and based on the provisions of those grants. So if they're out there, we'll garner them. If we hear of them, then we'll let you know about the others that are out there. The CPC grants that are always going on for state of Massachusetts, that we're working with Fall River and New Bedford on right now for do those. Now, CPC grants are limited to how much money they can get, but they usually match it, and you try to match them both ways. Again, if it's a big thing, you know, if the town keeps going against the override, it's because they're concerned about how the money's spent. If they knew how the money was spent and they were in favor of how the money was spent, they would be in favor of it, because they'd get something out of it. And that last sentence I just said is key, getting something out of it. So you have to find out what they want, and you have to incorporate that into your solution.
And these are several examples of that. I mean, we have these other projects that's how they got their grant, and it's amazing, this project right now, Higher Ground, they had no money to do this $5 million building, and it's pretty amazing. They took this abandoned building on the bottom, and right now, they are right, it's in
Is that a
construction.
state grant or a federal grant?
They have both.
Yeah. This is, they came from Nigeria, and one of the people did a little rendering from up above here, and then we had to make the plan work in phases. So we're in phase, they just got funding for phase one. And tomorrow morning at 8:30, we're going to a little event, a little celebration that they got the completion of one, and yes, I'll be there. I'll be there at all those things. I live this stuff, right? You gotta live it, you gotta enjoy it.
So, if I may, there's one item I don't think we've touched on that I do want to make sure that you all have a grasp of. In terms of presenting any final outcome to the voters of Westport when it comes to needing funding for this. Part of what I am hoping to get out of this study is the ability to present a true cost-benefit analysis on what it would take to do something with the old high school building, but also how does that compare with the needs, the existing costs, the issues in the other buildings. So I know that, you know, it was part of the RFP as far as a general analysis of the other town buildings. So I just want to make sure that's on your radar as a huge part of this as well, so.
We have a slide here for that question.
So in other words, you want us to look at all the buildings, as I understand your question, and you're more or less concerned that we didn't include that or thought about that as the final?
I just wanted to make sure that
Yeah.
you had this
As
on.
part of the analysis
Well,
is,
and to follow up on that, I mean, I question whether for $150,000 you could do all of these buildings.
yeah. How many buildings are there?
So,
7?
within this, we're talking about,
8?
right,
I thought it was 7, okay. Oh, wait a minute, 8, not 7, forget it.
so the only other buildings that are specifically, we're asking specifically about are the town hall, where we're in right now, the town hall annex just down the road,
Yeah.
and the council on aging buildings.
Yeah.
And the needs and potential issues
And the high school.
of those.
Right.
Well,
Right.
in addition to the, yeah. in
But I
addition
thought
to
we
the
had
high
4.
school. So
Yeah,
it's 4
that's what I
total.
have here
but, yeah.
on the.
Yeah,
Maybe
so-
something-
no, we do it the same day. You look at the buildings, like that, you know, we have forensics, but I'm not gonna go in here with a backhoe and a pick and start picking at a wall. I'm not gonna look at that, I'm gonna look at, you know, facially, what a building has, the systems and whatnot, and I'll come out with the appropriate engineers to do that.
I mean, stuff happens. So, let's assume it can't get done in 12 weeks. What does that do to your fee proposal? I mean,
If,
I presume you build in at the end some increments if we gotta go to 13 weeks and 14 weeks and whatnot, that
Yeah.
there's a.
if it goes to 8 years, I'm gonna have a big issue with that one, right? If it goes that long. We set a schedule, and if it goes a few weeks, even a month or 2 months later, I don't go back for that. It's the general, because you get the momentum. Once you get the momentum, you become part of that feeling, you know, there's so many bond
Well, I'm
proposals.
implying scope too.
Well, obviously, if the scope changes, then I gotta bring certain consultants in, like, consultants gotta ask. That hasn't changed. So when you practice, that's still the same thing. So we're hoping the scope stays the same when we get to that point. I think
The
the,
scope I can see changing is the amount of time it takes to get moving down the road here.
if we go 3 steps forward and 5 steps back, 4 steps forward and 6 steps back, yeah, I'm gonna be alerting, not that about a fee, but I'm gonna be alerting, hey, we're not getting anywhere, what do you wanna do? I'll call a huddle to that core team again and say, we gotta restart this, rethink this. You probably will have people in the town, I'm not saying you will, but Most towns have people that just don't want any progress. And then it'll just put the ore in the water to stop. Yeah, every town has them. We try to invite those people to the town. You try to invite them into conversation. Sometimes they want to work with you, sometimes they don't. You know, those are the people that, you know, when you win the bond referendum, those are usually the people that come out of the woodwork and congratulate you at the end when it's a successful project. Or they write bad pieces of stuff in the paper about you. I mean, that's what you have to do. But what's probably central to my argument is gonna be that when you form the group, you form a bond. And no matter who you pick tonight or a number of nights you interview, you want to form a bond with that person or that group or that firm. And you want to all be there to support each one of their ideas and support them in nature. If the group that you have is splintered, you'll never get anything passed. And part of that is finding that group together. I've battled a lot of bond referendums where we've won and we've lost. And I've met a lot of people and I've got a lot of friends as a result of it, because you become friends. You rely on each other, you talk out personal stuff. I find out who you are, what about you, your history, what you like, what you don't like, and that's who you are. And that's what you want to do as a group. You want to do that same thing. And once you form that body, that strong body around you, then you can take on other things. And you can say, well, this is the direction we want to go. I really wanted to go this way, but I understand all the provisions, I'll go this way. That's how you get it done. Not everyone's going to get what they want, including ourselves.
So I believe we're right up against it here. Is there anything that you would like to add in closing?
I just would like to say that some of the issues that you spoke about tonight, it's not going to scare us. We've dealt with a lot of more difficult ones, and they're very similar, you know, and we're on to take on the challenges we've done before. We've got some great people in the organizations. My 5 principals are friends, and they're all professionals, and they're pretty tough people, and they can do a good job and a good design, and I'll make sure that happens. And I want to be in the fight with you. So,
Thank you very much for your
thanks for
time.
having us.
Thank
Really appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Okay, take care. Look familiar. No? Okay.
Been around a little bit, but
Yeah. Perhaps,
Stand at ease for a moment. I'll switch over happens here, but thank you again.
okay.
splinters with toothpicks. Splintered with toothpicks. There's nothing left.
Okay, everyone, thank you very much again.
Thank you very much
Appreciate it.
for coming down. I know it takes a lot of time.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Great Thanksgiving.
Everybody? I don't know what they're gonna wanna do. I think we'll just plug in the thumb drive.
Sit down here if you want.
Evan Platt from Building Engineering Resources, here with HKT Architects. Paul will be joining us shortly, and Bill Hammer as well from HKT, principal and owner of HKT.
Excellent.
So Bill is running late. I guess he left at 3:30 from
Boston.
yeah, and it was exceptionally bad night, clearly. So yeah, so.
that ride seems to get worse and worse every week.
Yeah. Yeah, fortunately for us, we're in Easton, so we miss most of the traffic.
Oh, Easton,
Oh,
that's a
yeah.
45-minute drive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah. But, yeah, Charlestown, that's a bear.
Oh,
Boston, you
right,
need to get out of
yeah.
Boston at
My wife
3.
goes into North Station, you gotta go
Leave
another.
at 3, all bets are off.
That's the killer,
Yeah,
getting across, yeah,
yeah.
right, South
We'll see
Station.
what happens
Our-
with Bob
our
tonight,
works in Easton,
because
maybe you
Bob's in
bet.
a meeting up there.
Yeah, I
Hopefully
lived
he
in
makes it to the
Charleston
next
for
one.
a while and worked for City Hall. It was faster to walk.
Right, exactly. Yeah, they got a nice new pedestrian bridge going in. The pedestrian bridge over to North Station now,
Yeah.
yeah.
I hear footsteps.
Welcome.
We just did the thumb drive, so they can drive.
Oh, perfect, okay.
You ready to go?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
All right.
Go right ahead.
Val, are you all set?
We're still rolling? That's what I thought, okay.
Okay.
Okay, my name is Paula Claridge, I'm with HKT Architects, and I'm going to be the project manager on this project. Bill Hammer is the principal in charge for this. He was stuck in some pretty horrendous traffic, is my understanding, so I don't think he's going to be able to join us today. And Evan Plant is with BER, he's going to be our mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and fire protection consultant on this project. And start going through the project, the presentation. This is the team that we've built. We have PAR, all of these people that are on our team, the companies that are on our team, we've all worked with for many years, so have very good working relationships with them. PAR is going to be doing the civil and structural engineering. BER will be doing all the MEP, and Building Envelope Technologies will be our building envelope consultants for that, assessing the existing buildings. TCI is our cost estimator. We've worked with them for years, and Jerry Turturro has been great. He's very good at coming in. I don't think he's ever missed on price, so we have a lot of faith in him and the cost estimates that he's provided to us over the years. AKF is our code consultants. We've also worked with them for many years, very knowledgeable, and have been keeping up with all the latest code changes, energy code changes, things like that, can advise on that. And UEC are environmental consultants. And the firm HKT, we've been in business for over 50 years. Bill has been, was one of the founding partners with it, so he's gonna be seeing this project from start to finish. And one of the things that we pride ourselves on is our community input and engagement. And there are several techniques that we've used over the years for trying to get input from the community, having charrettes, surveys, website kind of information, that sort of thing. So that's one of the things that I think will be really important for this project. And then because we've worked with all of these consultants for so many years, our relationship with them, the way they do business, their work ethic, and how we all work together, I think is a very good team for this project as well. Some of our background and experience, the photo at the upper right is the Seth Ventris building. This was a building that was built in 1895 as kind of one of the original multi-purpose sort of buildings. It was a town hall. It also had a police station. There's even a jail down in the basement, or was, and it was also used as a school. And HKT converted it into a community center. And the auditorium that was already in there was renovated and brought back to life. It had been used kind of as a giant storeroom and neglected. And then school offices were made down into the basement, and the whole exterior of the building was restored back to its former grandeur. And the second project there is the facilities improvement plan that we did for the town of Fairhaven. We did an assessment of 13 town-owned buildings there and tried to come up with a comprehensive improvement plan for all of them and how they could be either renovated or reused and just what they could do with that. The bottom photo is for the Wellesley, that's their town hall. We did a town-wide capital projects plan for them, did a comprehensive plan for and the design of 2 elementary schools, also for the Warner Recreation Center and repairs to their fire station. The upper 2 photos are of the Princeton Public Facilities Master Plan. We did an audit of 6 town-owned buildings there to prioritize the needs for repairs and what needed to be done for each one. The project in the middle is the Salisbury Emergency Services. We did a feasibility study of the fire station, police station, and DPW facilities so they could plan for future operations. And the photo on the left is the police station, which was actually constructed. The rest was left in the planning stage. And the photos on the bottom are of the Cambridge City Hall Annex. It was an assessment of the existing building. It was built in 1871. It had been through a lot of uses over the years. I think it was originally a school, and it had been renovated multiple times, also suffered a fire damage. And the roof, what we did in our renovation of it was to put back those pediments that you see that were originally taken off, I think, after the fire had happened. So a lot of research went into it to restore it back to what it originally looked like. And in the end, it ended up becoming one of the first municipal LEED Gold buildings in the state. One of the things that I think would be kind of a challenge on this project, but we're looking forward to, is the process and understanding the project scope. Typically what we do is we do a programming document, so we send out questionnaires for the town to fill out, and it's to understand how the different municipal offices, because we're kind of talking about moving municipal offices possibly into either the old high school or renovating the town offices themselves. So the first thing we have to understand is just how you use your spaces, what kind of space needs and square footage and areas are needed for all of those. I think there was some discussion about the needs maybe changing from the size and the number of staff that you currently have, so we'd want to plan into the future to make sure that whatever we do down the line will meet your needs as far as your concepts for growth, things like that. Then we develop high-level concepts for use based on the community input that we get to, because I think it seems like one of the challenges with trying to figure out what to do with the buildings here is the possibly community pushback or opinions that we want to try to address that. And then we'd look into options for reuse, whether we would renovate all of the buildings, whether we'd renovate some of the buildings and maybe demolish some of them, or do a total redevelopment, but we'd develop a plan for how we would do that, even if it means phased renovation for some of the buildings too, that you could do over a number of years. And then we'd present options for feedback. We'd want to get more community input and just make sure that everybody is kind of engaged with the ideas that are putting out there, and we can try to satisfy as many people, members of the community, as possible. And then finally, we'd finalize a preferred option for presentation and to the community. And in our evaluation of existing buildings, this is just an example of a evaluation I did recently for the Cohasset Public Safety buildings. We do a thorough review of the previous reports. We've already kind of read through those, but we'd want to look at them a little more in depth with you to try to understand what has already been discussed, what your feelings and thoughts are, and what the proposals were there, the studies that they had done, what worked, what didn't work, and try to incorporate that into what we do for our assessment and planning. The existing conditions assessments is very similar, I believe, to what they've probably done. We'd do visual deficiencies and repair history. We'd check the envelope components and the interior finishes, what sort of condition they're in. The building systems, whether they're adequate for reuse or if they have to be completely replaced. And code compliance and mandated updates for accessibility and energy. With the new energy code, there are a lot of upgrades that need to happen that a year ago weren't necessary. Also, we'd look at structural issues and then civil issues as well, and how the sites are organized, and see if that can be improved upon as well. And basically, once we're all done, the assessments will kind of identify benefits and adequacy for the use of the building for the short or the long term, depending on how we choose to move forward.
So the MEP, FP, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and fire protection building assessment, that would be performed by us, Building Engineering Resources, in partnership with HKT. A lot of our projects start with a building assessment, right, of the existing mechanical systems, the electrical systems. In regards to the high school, right, and the study that was already performed, we know much of it is obsolete, right, and really isn't suitable for reuse, but pieces of it may be, right? And so that's where we factor that into the asset end of life with the overall project goals. If there's a phased approach and potentially maybe we can get 10 years out of the existing boiler room, right, and factor that into the renovations, we can evaluate that. That would, of course, be factored into the overall financial analysis of the project, right? And whether we're looking at the individual town buildings here, the town hall, and the town annex, with now having multiple buildings, we have multiple services. So there's independent boiler plants, there's independent electrical services that need upgrade, right? So that's something we would factor in upfront and, of course, deeply assess within the cost estimates. So our firm, we are a Massachusetts-based firm. We have a lot of stretch code experience. Many of these are good practices, right, for a high-performing building. They're now mandated within our state, right? And Westport being a stretch code community, we have a deep familiarity with those. One of them, here's a few highlights within the stretch code. One is solar readiness, right? So you're not required to install solar PV within a stretch code community. You are in specialized opt-in. But solar readiness, it's conduit pathways, it's evaluating the roof for structural capacity to support those PV photovoltaic arrays in the future, and be prepared. And the energy recovery on the ventilation systems, this is a very common technology within all HVAC systems now, offers substantial operational savings, right? And then the EV ready component of this, for a Group B building, you're actually required to have 20% of your parking spots EV ready, meaning conduit installed, wire pulled, and bases ready for an EV charging station to be installed. So there's substantial cost with that. There are some caveats to it and other options, but it is a substantial cost burden, right? And one that needs to be very well understood for the different sites. Our decision-making process, we always like to offer energy modeling as a part of the study process, especially when we get into maybe a tussle with system selection, with overall project goals, upfront project costs, initial costs. What is the payback on a higher performing system? Is there any payback? We see this a lot with geothermal heat pump systems versus air source heat pump systems. Depending on the building type, it may not always make sense. But with the really very common federal grant programs that are very easily available now and readily available to a lot of municipalities, it might actually make geothermal more cost effective than an air source heat pump system. That can also be integrated with a common boiler system, a hot water system. We have a lot of heat pump technology at our fingertips now, which really makes it very flexible. And it's part of the process is just understanding what the town's goals are, right? Of course, initial cost constraint is, first and foremost, but beyond that, what is the long-term plan for these buildings? Is it a 50, 75-year building, or is it a near-term 20 to 30-year plan? Paul, it's yours.
Okay, so one of the things that we always try to work with clients is trying to manage the cost, and it's always an important concept anyway. But this diagram here we like to refer to because it kind of helps really clearly illustrate that green swoop is where you can really have influence on the cost if you make a lot of decisions up front and incorporate that into the project, incorporate everything in as early as possible, which is why we really like to spend a lot of time on the programming phase to try to really understand what you need, get a lot of feedback from you, and try to get decisions made early so we can incorporate that into the drawing so it can all be priced out. The red line that swoops up is changes that are made as you get further and further down the design process. And then, of course, once you get into construction, as you make more changes, it's gonna result in change orders and increase the cost of the project. So the more we can do to try to help you give us information up front, that'll help control the cost as much as possible. And we also have, like I already talked about, our cost estimator, Jerry, who would provide cost estimates to us if the projects go into construction at various stages throughout the project to make sure that we can stay close to the goals that we've set for the project. For the feasibility study, he could provide cost estimates for the various options that we're proposing, so you can have an idea of how to make decisions based on the needs versus the cost for that as well. This is some of the stakeholder engagement and community process that I spoke about a little earlier. We'd love to have the community input on this so that you have a lot of support for the project and don't have to be fighting it all the way through. So I feel like they're heard, identify key groups and individuals, and try to develop public goals and concerns so we can try to address those and the ideas that we put forth and let them know that we are taking their considerations into account. The other thing that we've done in the past before is also have all department meetings with the departments of the town and get them all in one room, have everybody present their ideas, their thoughts, their concerns, who needs to work with what, who thinks they should be in what building, just so it is very helpful, we've found, for everybody to hear what other people say, because a lot of times you have your meetings within departments, but you don't necessarily talk to each other, so it's helpful to hear those conversations happen. And some of the obstacles that we can foresee with this is getting to the yes. So we know that there have been
That's
a
the
lot of,
hard part.
yes, we know there have been a lot of studies. We know there's been a lot of effort put into this, and we don't know what they are yet, but there is something that has stopped this project from moving forward. So we want to understand, how do we get to the yes? So try to understand any opposition to the previous studies and concepts that were put forward in that, and then try to understand what is expected of this feasibility study to make sure that we're addressing the proper concerns for you and for the community and trying to tap into the passion of the community and what they want to see happen with these buildings. We'll also use the engagement process to reinforce the discussion with the community to find the middle ground so we can make sure to get their support and accommodate multiple points of views. We also understand that money could be an obstacle because, as Evan has already pointed out, there are some costs that, if we move forward, might be pretty challenging not to include, like energy costs and updates that we need to do to address code-related issues, that sort of thing, structural improvements, that sort of thing. So it could be an obstacle, so just something to keep in mind as we're putting all of these ideas forward to see how we can best address that. And if it is an obstacle, what we can do to try to, bring it back into budget.
And one thing in our toolkit that we like to use for that is a life cycle cost analysis. So that factors in your energy costs, your annual energy costs, along with the initial energy, whatever your options are, your initial system costs, your annual energy costs, your annual maintenance costs, and then the expected life expectancy of the system. So if your system's only going to last, your selected system may be the cheapest, but it's only got a 20-year life expectancy. You need to factor in that system replacement every 20 years, right? So maybe it's a 25-year outlay, right? Air source heat pump technology, while it's very readily available, it is more of a commodity piece of equipment. So it's really got a shorter term life expectancy than something like a robust chiller boiler plant. And that's something we'd really want to look at holistically with every option, right? Because that a lot of times that value can be lost, right? If it's short-sighted, first cost only discussion.
So this was the initial pass-through for the schedule for the feasibility studies. And the first section is more of an information gathering. So everything that's kind of in that light blue section there, we'd have a kickoff meeting to establish goals, schedule milestones, do an initial public outreach just to get opinions that we can start using to formulate the initial concept developments. It's also when we do our programming and our site analysis as well. We foresee that to be about a 6-week period. The next phase would be the concept development, and that would be based on all the information that's gathered. This is when we'd also have a design charrette, and we can choose whoever you would like to participate, if you want that to be the town, if we want to have the community involved. We think it would be important to have them involved as well in a type of charrette of some sort. And again, having an all-department meeting, and then we'd develop options for feedback. And we'd like to present those options to the community for feedback, and possibly a website survey or something like that, just to get initial input to see if we're headed in the right direction. Then the next section, that would also be about 9 weeks. The next phase would be the cost, finalizing the plan and cost. And we foresee that to be about 7 weeks. And then, of course, once we have our final option, again, do a public outreach and present that and get input on the direction we're headed. And then finally, we'd develop a draft report and get input from both the town and the community, and then put together a final report and put that out, publish it on the town website or however you wish to release that. And some of the key components for our final feasibility report would be the space programming for the municipal departments and any shared spaces that if you have multiple departments housed in a single building, what sort of spaces that can be shared to try to get some efficiency out of the square footage usage. Evaluations for each of the different buildings that we're looking at. Test fits for renovated and or new buildings, and articulate the relationships that are critical for operations in that. We do a building evaluation matrix, which kind of has all of the buildings, has the different functions, how they all intersect together to make sure that we're putting the right teams and the right departments together in the right buildings. And then cost analysis and opinion of probable costs. And then we'd also have conceptual plans in there where we can kind of take the areas that we've allotted based on the programming and see what fits and where they would go and how they would relate to each other. And then we'd also have advantages or disadvantages, the various concepts that we studied. So why this particular team? I think our experience has been very diverse. HKT has worked on a lot of different sorts of buildings. We've done a lot of feasibility studies. We work with a lot of municipalities, so we're very familiar with the process and the task that is being asked of the team for this project. We also have a great track record with all of our consultants and working together, and we all work really well together, and I think we have a level of comfort in knowing that we can rely on them to meet deadlines and to give proper feedback and that sort of thing. And we also strive to find opportunities among challenges and deliver some creative problem-solving techniques that we hope will address what you're looking for out of this project. I think that is it. Yes, thank you.
Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I think you answered my, oh, go ahead.
I think your schedule of starting in January and going through June is realistic. Not much sense in really trying to do a hell of a lot between now and the first of the year. But we've got a proposed budget of $150,000. I think that's capped at that, isn't that, Jim?
It is right now, yes.
That's a lot of work for $150,000 between you and your consultant. Is that realistic?
I believe it can be. I mean, I know Bill has looked at this and he would be able to speak to this much better than I can. But I don't think we'd be going after the project if we didn't think we could do it. And I think that it does seem realistic for us to be able to do that in the timeline for that amount of money.
With the number of partners and vendors you're using?
What is that?
With the number of partners that you'll be doing the project with?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
How has in your experience, how have you seen community interaction? I mean, did you find that communities are very engaged, or you find that you have to pull people really in to get input? I'm talking about taxpayers, residents, not so much the departments, but that would use the building, but community input. I mean, how much community input do you really see?
It depends on how engaged the community is, and it depends on how you put the information out there that you want feedback for. We've done a couple of different things. One is to have meetings where people actually show up. In some communities, we get huge turnouts, some, just a few people show up. And that's helpful just because I think the interaction and the conversation is helpful. But we've also done where people do show up and then you can write ideas on Post-its. We found that if people don't have to actually get up and say something publicly, they might be a little bit more honest, but if they could put it on a Post-it and give you their opinion, you can get information that way. There's also website surveys where we can put it on the town website, or you can send out an email to get surveys, and that way you can contact people that may not necessarily show up to a town meeting. So there are a variety of ways, I think, that we can try to get as much input as we can.
Good. How willing would you be to help me? I point out, there's more people up here at the table than there are in the audience here today.
That tends to happen.
You might have noticed that.
Yes.
And that's a problem, because you get to the end of this thing and nobody has been involved, nobody knows what's going on. So if we're gonna try this one more time, hopefully we're gonna do it differently. And, you had a picture of a meeting someplace where the room was packed with people. God, we'd love that. That'd be great. I've never seen, except at a town meeting or a controversial thing. Actually, the high school had some big meetings, the new high school, but very rarely, and in this process, it's never happened. So part of a consultant's job here is gonna be doing something a little different, is to get the process going before we can even start talking about alternatives and costs and all this, heat pumps and everything else.
Right,
That's over there until we get this process going.
that's right. Try
And
to generate some
unfortunately, for
excitement.
better or for worse, the consultant that we hire has got to take a lead in helping us get it going. Because otherwise, we can sit here ourselves and come up with every idea in the world, and I can guarantee it. I don't even know if it'll get past the selectmen, much less the town meeting.
Yeah, no, it can be a challenge, and I know even in my town, same thing. In a lot of the meetings that we've gone to, it's turnout with just a few people. It's just another select board meeting or this or that, so it's hard to get people engaged. But I think part of that is also getting the word out there as early and as often as possible. So send out newsletters, send out emails, put it on the town website, and just, we can talk through the things that you have found that maybe have worked or haven't worked, and things that we've done in the past that have worked or haven't worked. So I think we could try to find ways to try to generate some interest before we actually have the event or the charrette or whatever we're looking for community input.
Yeah, through social media and whatnot, right?
Yes, exactly.
The old-fashioned newspaper is gone, and so, we don't have one single community newspaper, and it's very fractured throughout the town as to what paper. So it's hard to get a singular message out to the whole community, because there isn't that one paper, so some people will use social media, others, are trying to get information maybe from a newspaper. So it's hard to find that one good element to capture people's attention and get the information out there. So that's why I bring it up, and John hit the point, that it's important to get that engagement, but boy, it's hard to get.
Yeah.
So in this context, how would you use a charrette?
I think just trying to get, what we could do is, one of the options that we had up there is putting out information about what do you want to see in the old high school. Do you want to save the old high school? Because that's another question. Do people really want to save that, or would they rather have the land and build something totally new? Will the cost for renovating it be too much? So we can put down various options, and people can sort of pick, I agree with that, I don't agree with that. There was one we had where you just put a little round sticker on, I like that one the best, I like this one not so much. And so there are ways that we can try to get opinions for how they want to see the buildings reused, what they think would be appropriate in those buildings, what they want to see with the town hall, if they think it's a great idea for moving town hall departments into another building or renovating this building. Because there's going to be a whole bunch of different opinions on what people think should be done with the buildings that we're talking about as part of this study, and it would be good to get the sort of input to see where people's minds are already, because I'm sure everybody's got sort of preconceived notions of, well, you've already got a town hall, why do you need to move? Or you've got this building, why do you need to keep that? Or let's tear it down, it's old and terrible. So I think just trying to establish what those opinions are would be helpful in just kicking it off and understanding where the community thoughts are right now.
But with that, though, I think some people are afraid to make that decision not knowing what the cost is. It's easy to say, well, just tear it down and sell it. Well, I don't think people realize that it could cost $4 or $5 million to just tear that building down and remove all of the rubble from it. It's easy to say, tear it down, don't need it. But if there's a cost associated with it, so that's why it's a little bit of a chicken and an egg, that I think that it's hard for people to make a decision that they would stick with without knowing approximately how much it's gonna cost for that decision. It's like, oh, I like this, oh, but it's that much, I know I like this one better.
Yeah, and we could do that kind of thing too,
Right.
where
I think
because
it's-
we have multiple opportunities for community engagement, you may come in at the beginning and say, tear it down, let's get rid of it. And
Right.
then when we do the studies to show this is the benefits, this is the, negatives for that, and then you go, well, yeah, let's not do that. So I think there are opportunities several times down the road where people can change their minds once they have more information
Right.
too.
Good, okay.
Does anyone else have any questions at this time?
Why should we hire you?
Went right away. That's why we started in January, because that gives us time to get the contracts all in place, so we can hit the ground running in the new year.
Tell us why we should hire you versus all these other people we're talking to.
Oh, well, I think, again, it's because we've got a lot of experience in trying to get community's input. And I think we have a lot of experience in not only doing feasibility studies for municipalities on town-owned buildings and things, but we have a lot of creativity, I think, in ways that will meet needs that you may not even be aware that you have yet. And I'm very proud to say that I think with HKT, we are very good creative problem solvers, and I think that would make us outstanding compared to our competition, perhaps.
So, back to something Cindy just said, how do you manage expectations, right? There's a lot of ideas for this building, there's a lot of ideas for the high school, but everything comes with a cost. So how do you combine the two, the expectations with the cost, or is the plan to kind of see what the community wants and then work towards that goal and then come up with the cost later? Or do you include that all together? How do you make it work?
I think that's something we'd have to discuss together, and especially in that early stage when we're trying to set goals and milestones. If it turns out that we need to have sort of an initial kind of cost input when we're coming up with our concepts kind of early on before we get to the final report and have like all these options and like a final cost. But we can start getting input early on, I think, from Jerry, our cost estimator, as well as from experience from what we've done on previous buildings and with input from BER and their knowledge of how, things have been going on other projects and the costs associated with systems and things like that. So I think it's something that we can kind of address early on just to get initial concepts for, you're gonna be doing a lot of structural work on this, so there's gonna be more cost associated on that. With this option, structure may not be such a problem, we can just, move in and make some few rearrangements and adjustments, renovations to the inside. So depending on the sort of concepts we have, I think we can get some conceptual cost ideas up front that we can present and just let people know that if we do this, just understand it'll cost this much. Maybe not an exact number, but, general concepts.
And will you be the lead on the project?
I will.
You will. And who else will be working with you throughout the project closely? I mean, who do we deal with on a regular basis?
I would probably be your main contact, and then Bill would be involved from start to finish as well. And if you can't reach me, you can reach Bill, but I would be your primary contact on the project.
Now, can you also provide assistance to the town in seeking grants for any of the projects that we may pursue? If we're going down a certain path, you may be aware of certain grants that are available on either a state or a federal level?
Personally, no. We'll have some that we might be aware of that we've seen on other projects. We don't normally get involved with helping find the grants and that sort of thing. That would be more of an OPM kind of related task.
Okay.
And I don't know, we could certainly ask our consultants if they're aware of any sorts of funds and grants that might be available, but
Yeah,
it's
we've
not
had a number of projects recently, Hamilton and the town of Wenham, both, it was actually, one of the projects was because of the grant. Another, the grant presented itself more than halfway through design, so it actually changed our system, but to the overall project's benefit, right?
Is that a state or federal grant?
That, I believe it was federal, yeah,
What dollar range are we looking at for these grants?
hundreds of thousands,
Hundreds of thousands?
yeah.
But not tens of millions.
Wouldn't that be
I'm
nice?
looking for tens
It
of
was,
millions.
for that project, I mean, it was, I think between the federal tax incentive and then the grants, they had most of their HVAC system costs covered, right? It's a big chunk, when it can be, yeah, 15% of your overall building costs, right?
Yeah, and right now, we're working with clients whose building we finished in 2023, but they're looking to get tax credits for the geothermal system that they put in. And so we're working with their tax advisors now to put together the information so they can get that tax benefit for the system they put in.
You've, there were previous reports done, what's your opinion of them?
They looked like they were pretty thorough, I thought, for the one that was done in 2020, I believe, or 2022, I
I
can't
mean,
remember.
the ones that I think, are the code analysis.
Yeah.
Landvest did some cost and programmatic things, as I remember, so I would hope we're not reinventing the wheel.
Us too. That's why I think the kickoff meeting would be very important to sit down and go through those previous reports so that we don't duplicate efforts, especially if there are things in there that you found that weren't helpful or weren't beneficial. We don't want to do those again. So, but I think they did have some good information in there, like Landvest, I think, estimated the value of the property for the old high school at 11 million. So that's good to know, right off the bat.
Sold.
Yeah, if someone approached us, we would sell it at that.
Yeah.
It's not really worth, I don't think, truly in the market that you could get that value from it. But
But
But having that-
the overall report was
it's
good.
good,
thorough,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that all of them have a lot of really good information in them. And even the studies that what could be done with the old high school building are useful, knowing that even if you move all the town offices over there, you'd still have an excess of 44,000 square feet.
At least, you're right.
Yeah,
Right.
so knowing that already kind of gives us a little bit of feedback already that, maybe we need to think about something else or do things a little differently.
So we had a general scope in the RFP. What changes to that scope would you suggest going forward as we look at a contract? Is there anything in particular that you think we really missed, or is there anything that you'd like to see different, or?
Nothing that I would want to see different. I mean, it seems like you have a list of things that you need to understand as a town in order to make decisions. And I think our job is to kind of help you work through those and assess that. And as we're talking, if something comes up or if we learn something through the programming process, then we can talk about if those are the right goals. But I think it's something that could be kind of massaged as we work together and just learn more about, what your needs are.
Does anyone have any other questions at all, or? Excellent. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Yeah, thank you.
Most appreciated.
Yes.
Absolutely.
We appreciate you coming down. It's a lot of work to do these things. and
Yeah.
Thank you very
Today in
much.
particular, the traffic was just crazy. That's why Bill isn't here,
Right.
But I came just from Norwell, and I left there at 4:30, and they said,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, you'll get to Westport, no problem.
Right.
And it took me almost 2 hours to get
Right,
here.
I know, it's Wednesday, it's just,
I don't know, yeah, there's something in the air, because it was like backed up the whole way, but I'm glad I made it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, it's very helpful.
And I think Bill will be sending you PDFs of the presentation that we went over.
Oh, good.
Well, that'd be helpful.
So, all right. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everybody.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is anything not recently anticipated. I don't believe I have anything, so with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Just before we adjourn, just on the process moving forward, we're going to meet soon to render a decision, or?
Thank you. So it would be my intention to meet obviously not next week. But very shortly after that, it would be my intention to have a remote meeting to discuss, well, first of all, I want the opportunity for any committee members that were not able to attend to be able to see the presentations. And basically, I'd like to call a remote meeting to have a vote of which one to recommend.
Okay.
Of course, there could be discussion involved in that as well.
Okay.
But anticipating my own travel schedule as well as this travel schedule, I know of some other people would like to do the next one remote, probably
Okay.
the first week of December, if that's agreeable to the
Just
committee.
my opinion is I think remote meetings have diminishing value. Especially for discussions and deliberations. For quick business, check-ins, fast reports, they're good, but I think that this is a pretty weighty decision, and I would not be in favor of making this decision in remote discussion.
I agree.
Also me, I agree to that, too.
Another
in
thing,
that case-
frankly, I'm not crazy about, I understand the timing, but wait 2 weeks to have a discussion about this is everything, well, I mean, I made some notes here, I don't know if anybody else did, but after 2 weeks, it's, we're all gonna sort of forget about what the high and low points of each one of these presentations are. I would suggest, you know, sit down for 5 minutes at your computer and write a couple notes to the committee and say, look, based on what I saw last night or yesterday, I thought Team A was strong here, weak here, Team, otherwise.
Well, let me ask you this. I would be perfectly willing to have a meeting on Monday night to follow up. The one thing I do want to make sure is that the individuals that were not able to be present have a chance to view the recording of the meeting.
So they get,
The individuals that were not able to be here tonight, I want them to have a chance to view the recording of the meeting and the presentation, should they.
well, then tell them to
So-
look at it.
So what I say again, if I would be perfectly willing to have an in-person meeting next Monday night if the committee agrees would agree with that.
I can do Monday.
That works for me.
Then we'll go ahead and call it
I
and
can do
get
it.
the agenda together very quickly then.
What time would you be meeting?
Probably, obviously, there's no select board meeting, so, I mean, we could do 6 o'clock if everyone's agreeable to
I
that,
think
so.
Yeah, I'm okay at 3 o'clock.
I'm a big fan of getting
3
this
o'clock would be able,
sooner rather than later.
I don't, yes, ma'am.
Is there any possibility to get the information out there so the public can come? I know you want the public to come, is there, find a way to get it out there, so they can hear that meeting?
Absolutely, I mean,
Because
it
just
was,
putting it on the website is not enough.
I agree.
is there,
If we could get some details to.
We could try to do it on Facebook and other places, if you'd like to put something together and put it on Facebook and neighborhoods associations and things like
Yeah.
that, so that we can get people, because you want people to come.
Well,
Yeah.
why can't we Zoom this, have a meeting and put it on the TV?
People would like to be here.
Do we, I'm confused, because those are all great ideas for doing charrettes and for moving the process along.
Right.
What we're doing is we're discussing the selection of a consultant to manage the process, and we're not doing the process. We're just making a decision about awarding a contract.
We're looking to build it.
That's all we're doing is evaluating those two
So-
I
firms.
understand that. Pardon me?
Looking to build community excitement and get it going.
well, I certainly am not opposed to,
Well,
and
I
as many
think that we're
public as
under-
well, but
right,
I think,
we're under the constraints of time here.
exactly,
You know,
yeah.
with a holiday, with travel schedules of people, and as John mentioned, I think it is important to get some of our fresh thoughts.
Yeah.
and-
I agree.
And vote on it and take action on some of the thoughts, so,
Well, at least if we could get information out about this meeting, because this was very important, because you heard what the two candidates were saying. Just get that out there so people will know this is happening.
Would your recommendation be for, I don't know, the town clerk page to, you mentioned Facebook, I'm just trying to, what would you think, what would you say would be the best avenue to get it out? Because I do agree, I'd love for more people to attend these, but I mean,
Other media,
All of them.
Well, this meeting can be posted to Facebook, so,
yes,
so the announcement of
things like
our
that. would be
future
very
meeting.
good. Yeah.
that's, yeah,
It isn't
maybe we
much
could,
time, you're right, because Monday is so close. It's also better if we have something like 2 weeks to plan, and we know when the future meetings are gonna be. I think get more people coming, like Monday is not good for me.
Me either.
Yeah,
Why?
so, that's
So-
okay, I mean, I'm just saying, I'll look at.
What I will say is that when we get to the point of actually needing the community input on, once we've selected, I guess, a vendor, that when that process goes, absolutely, it needs to be, as, we want as many people here as possible. For this particular meeting, which would be just to select a vendor based on these presentations, I do like the idea of doing it quicker rather than later, but this was more of a next week being Thanksgiving type situation here, so, but if the committee is willing to meet in person next Monday, and I'll certainly do whatever I can to disseminate that beyond just a posting, but if,
Well, I think on your agenda, just post something very detailed, and then they could, take it wherever you want to take it, Because the consultants, we're talking about that community engagement. I mean, that's going to happen when we decide on the consultant that
once we
wanna
get,
use.
absolutely, so, okay, so we'll go ahead and set the next meeting for Monday night at 6 o'clock, and I will get
Earlier,
that to.
you couldn't do earlier, or you,
I can't do earlier.
Earlier would be difficult on Monday.
Okay.
For sure. I think 6 o'clock's probably as good as we can get it for this one. I doubt anybody wants to go later, so I think 6 o'clock it is. So, all right. I believe there is a motion to adjourn, but I am waiting on a second. Oh, excuse me. Yes, sir.
Sorry for last minute, can I,
Absolutely. Fire away, please.
last minute Hail Mary? I have a question, unexpectedly. So what is it you guys are thinking of building now, this building committee with my tax dollars? Just
That's what the,
very simply, what is it you're thinking of building? I'm curious.
thinking of building,
The
did you
building
say?
committee, right?
So
And they're proposing something, you're kicking around with something.
what what we have been evaluating are two vendors that responded to a request for proposals to evaluate town buildings and the old high school.
Evaluating town buildings.
Yes, yeah.
Fix them up, maintain them, and stuff like that.
It's a comprehensive study as to, part of the, a large part of the equation is what to do with the old high school building, but it also does involve
So it's not gonna be like a new Spencer boarding school that takes up like 4 blocks.
somehow I just don't see that happening, yes. So,
I pay my tax dollars within 3 days of getting the bill. I'm getting a little nervous, this Republican sweep with Trump and everything, all this, everybody in place. I'm gonna be tired, you right here, I'm getting a little nervous.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah,
if I could, just
absolutely.
for the public, the documentation that was referenced tonight, the previous studies and the like are all listed. If you go to the town website and go to the long-term building committee site on there, you can find all the documentation, so. I just want to note that.
Yes, thank you very much. All right, so once again, there is a motion to adjourn on the table
Is there a
that has
second?
not been seconded.
Second.
There is now a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, this meeting
Aye.
is adjourned. Thank you very much.